All right. All right, well, good evening, everybody. We're going to talk this evening about CMAs, comparative market analysis. When is this necessary? Why do we do it? And who is it for? Main three big questions. When do we do it? We should do it every time we have a property that we're looking at listing. And also we should be able to do one for when we have a buyer that may be ready to make an offer, to make sure that their offer is in realm of what market value is for that home. Just because a price, or just because a house is listed at a certain price does not necessarily mean that that's what the market value of it is. So either way, whether you're listing or buying, you need to know how to do a market analysis so that way you can adequately inform your clients of the situation that that home and what that home's value is in its current condition in today's market. So now, who determines the value? That would be you. You would do a CMA, a comparative market analysis on the home, find your comps, do the adjustments, and determine a fair market value for that home in its current condition in the state that it's in on that day. Now, who needs a CMA? Your client. When you're listing their home, they need to know what you feel that their home is worth, what it's valued at in today's market. And again, if you have a client that's buying a house, you want to make sure that the offer that they're getting ready to make is reasonable for the market value. So we'll go over all these different things for a CMA. Now, this class is going to be a two-part class because I can't teach everything with the CMA in one class, so we're going to get through a fair amount of it tonight, and then I'll leave you with some work that if you can complete when we come back next time. Our next class will be in 2 weeks, because since next week is Labor Day, we won't have a class next week, so we'll pick this up in 2 weeks. All right? So we're going to start with, first, is your subject property. Your subject property is the home that either you're making an offer on or you're getting ready to list. Now, when you have your subject property, once we get into the CMA, we never change the subject property. The subject property is always just the way it is. We change the comps to bring them to the subject property. All right, so you've determined your subject property. Now, what do you need to gather from your subject property? You're going to need to pull the tax records because you'll need information to have on the tax records. You'll need to do a walkthrough of the home and take notes and pictures. What type of notes do you take? Notes, you're going to take notes as far as how many bedrooms does the house have? How many bathrooms does it have? How many half baths? Any upgrades that it may have? What type of flooring does it have? How old is the roof? How old is the HVAC system? Is the house on a slab or a crawl space? Do they know ages of these appliances, the roof, and the HVAC system? Also, you're going to know not necessarily upgrades, but what are things that stands out that that house has to offer that could be valuable. Examples would be if it has a deck, if it has a fenced-in yard, if it has a patio, if it has great landscaping. Things that, your seller, if you're listing the home, things that your seller point out that this home has these attributes that can be classified as something of value that could impact the value of that home, whether it be positive or negative. You also want to make notes of, are there any defects with the home? If there's any problems with the home that could negatively impact the price, because again, that would still come into play. So you want to go through, and then when you do this walkthrough, if you're listing the home, again, we're going to base everything off of you're listing the home for this scenario. So when you do that walkthrough with the seller, you want to walk through the home room by room, take notes of each room, what that room has to offer, what type of flooring is in that room, any of the upgrades that the seller's already pointed out to you, and notate if there are any defects. And while you're going through this home and notating all this stuff, ask the seller, what have they done to the home since they have purchased it? So that way you can also take note, because they may forget that they've done something, but that may have value in the home. So you want to make sure you notate that. What have they done to improve the home? So whether that be they redid the floor. They may have bought the house and it had carpet. They took the carpet out and added hardwoods. You'll be able to see the hardwoods, but then you want to know that that's an upgrade that they did. If they have taken a closet that had wire shelving in it and they put in a closets by design closet in the closet, that's going to have value in the home. I mentioned appliances. If they have new stainless steel appliances, that can definitely be more valuable than if they have, say 10 or 15-year-old appliances. That's going to add value into that kitchen. What type of countertops are in the kitchen? Did they upgrade the cabinets? Do the cabinets have soft close? Are they shaker cabinets? Are they builder grade cabinets? Are they high-end cabinets? Countertops. Do they have laminate countertops? Do they have quartz? Do they have granite? Do they have butcher block? What are the options that they have in their countertops in the kitchen and in the bathrooms? Showers. Do they have a bath fitter, one-piece plastic insert shower? Do they have full tile shower? Do they have a tub shower combo, or is it just a walk-in shower? Is it handicap accessible? Is it not? Different things like this you want to take notes of. Whether they may end up having value in the home or not, we'll determine that when we get farther along. But either way, you want to make sure you take notes of all this. So that way you have it, so if you need it, you have it there, and you also have it available so you can make your adjustments if they come up. Okay? So we've done a decent walkthrough of the home. We've made all these notes. Now we want to do a walkthrough of the outside of the home. In the outside, we want to take note of what is the outside made out of. Is it brick? Is it vinyl? Is it hardy board? Is the whole thing brick? Is just the front side brick and the other three a different siding? The HVAC unit that sits outside, is there an air conditioner condensing unit, or is there a all-in-one pack unit? All-in-one pack unit is the furnace and the AC in one, versus if there's just a condenser unit outside, then the furnace is probably either in the utility closet, crawl space, or the attic. Make note of that. Is it gas or is it electric? When you're looking at the yard, is there a fence? Is there a patio? A deck? Landscaping. Have they done extraordinarily well with the landscaping? Things like that. You want to make notes of all that, and if you don't always remember all these things, don't feel bad about taking pictures of all those. A lot of times I will take pictures of a lot of this stuff because when I go back and do my full CMA, it's easier to reference pictures than, say, just my notes. If I have notes and pictures, it helps because then I can say, well, okay, I wrote down nice landscaping, but how nice was it? Well, now I have the picture. Or if I wrote down fully fenced in yard, when I go to make the adjustment, did I remember if it was a split rail fence, an iron fence, or a privacy fence, wooden or vinyl? If I don't remember that, I have the pictures. That way I can reference it back. Okay, fully fenced in yard with 6-foot vinyl privacy fence. I take my pictures. That way I can make sure I remember correctly. So take your pictures and your notes. That way when you go back to make your adjustments, you have two forms to reference back to, your notes and your pictures. It makes it a lot easier. And then the last thing you want to look at when you're doing the outside of the house or the inside is you want to measure the home. Verify the square footage, because square footage is going to be a big part of value of a home. If a home is 1,600 square feet versus 1,800 square feet, you're going to have a difference there. So you want to make sure you verify that square footage. And then you want to, if it's on a crawl space, you want to peek into the crawl space. Look into the crawl space. When you're looking into the crawl space, you're looking, does it have a vapor barrier? You want to know, does it smell of moisture? Is there any smells that are coming from it? And how does it look in general? As a licensed real estate agent, we are required to peer into a crawl space. We are not required to crawl the whole crawl space, but we are required to peer into it. Same thing with the attic. If there's an attic access, we are required to peer and look into the attic. We're not required to walk through the whole attic, but we are required to put our eyes on it. When you look in the attic, you're looking for water marks on the underlayment of the roof, joists, how do the beams look, how does everything up there appear to look, how thick and full is the insulation, things like that. So snap a picture, take notes. Do you have a question? No. All right. So now we've done our walkthrough. We made all of our notes. We got all of our pictures. Now we need to find our comps. We need to locate our comps. So we want to try to locate 3 comps. You want to go to the MLS and start there. You want to try to go within half to 1 mile of your subject. That's where you want to try to start. Now, if we can't find what we need in that radius, then we can always expand. But we want to try to start within a half to 1 mile radius of your subject home. Your subject home, is it 1 story or 2 stories? If it's 1 story, we want to try to find all 3 of our comps that are 1 story. If the house was built in the year 2000, we want to try to keep our subject home within 3 to 5 years of that, up or down, either way. We don't want to have a house built in 2000 and try to use a comp of a house built in 1900. We want to try to keep it as close as possible. Now, how I normally start my search is I start it with a 1 mile radius. I put in 1 story if that's what my subject home is. I try to do within 3 to 5 years of the age built, and then I look at my subject square footage, and I try to do, if my subject is say 2,000 square feet, I'm going to try to do 300 square feet of each direction, smaller and bigger, and then see what my search results are. If I'm lucky, I'm hoping to have 8 to 10 results that have closed within 6 months of my subject home. If I have 8 to 10, I back up. Time closed within 6 months. Within 180 days of today is when you want to try to search. So within 6 months of your comps being closed. So if I have 8 to 10 comps now I want to go through them individually. Go through the pictures, go through the agent remarks, go through the public remarks, and try to narrow those 8 to 10 down to the 3 best ones that I can find. Now, how am I going to try to narrow that down? First, I'm going to narrow it down is trying to look at what's closest to my house. If I have 2 or 3 that are in the same neighborhood, I would prefer to use those than the neighboring neighborhood. If I have 2 or 3 that are built within 1 or 2 years of my subject house, I'm going to try to pick those. If I have comps that are very, very similar in square footage, I'm going to try to pick those. Ideally, if you can narrow those attributes down to the tightest fit, it's going to help you make your adjustments. So you want to try to pick in those narrowed down. Now, if you have 7 or 8 that still fit all of that criteria, then I'd go to pictures. Look at the pictures. What pictures notate the upgrades or the attributes that the comps have that are more similar to my subject home? If my subject home has all carpet and I have a house that has all hardwood floors, I may want to try to see if I can find ones that may have all carpet. If my subject house has an upgraded kitchen and I have a comp that does not have an upgraded kitchen, then I may want to try to find ones that are more similar. So we try to narrow it down as tight as you can, because the better we can get our comps similar to our subject home, the easier and more accurate our CMA should turn out. So we try to narrow it down. Now, let's go into if we can't find 3 solid comps. How do we start expanding? First, I would expand the radius before I start expanding square footage and closed dates. Because if we don't have to go a year out and we can stay under 6 months, but say go 1.5 miles or 2 miles out, I feel that would be better served. You know, you can expand all of these things. Now, if you have a house that's out in the middle of the country, you may have to go 5 or 10 miles out. You may have to go a year out from the time it closed. You may have to expand on your square footage if you have a unique type property. And that's a whole nother avenue of how to basically back build a CMA if you have a very unique property, taking your comps and trying to build a CMA with those. But we try to take what we have, try to take what we know, and try to get the most similar. So if you can just go out 2 miles and find your 3 comps and everything else stay the same, that's perfect. If you go out 2 miles and still don't have 3 solid comps, then maybe look at the square footage. go out on the square footage a little bit. And then try to go maybe 9 months out, or a year if you have to. But you always want to try to keep it the same style of home. If you have a one-story home, you want to try to make sure all of your comps are also one story. You want to try your best to stay away from trying to pick a two-story home to compare to a one-story home. And then you have the year built. Then you can go to year built. You can always go 10 years difference. You want to try to stay away from going 20, 30, 40 years difference. But if you start out with 3 to 5 years and you need to go to 10 years, that is much more suited than trying to go farther than that. I try to not do anything past 15 years time built difference. I try to keep everything, period, under 15 years either way. Because then you start getting into different building styles, different building materials, different upgrades, a whole slew of different possibilities if you go farther and farther out. So try to keep that as close to as possible. So once you've done those searches, you should be down to hopefully 3 solid comps. Now when you have those 3 comps, what do you need with those to help do your market analysis? You're going to want the MLS sheet. You're going to want the property disclosures. Hopefully they're attached to the MLS. You're going to want those tax records and all the pictures that you're able to get from the listing. So that way you have as much information as you can possibly get to make these adjustments. Now, not every listing is going to have property disclosures. Not every listing may have a slew of pictures that show every inch of the home. So you may want to also use that when you're picking your comps. If you're getting really close with a couple and one only has 2 pictures, you may want to lean to the other one that may have more pictures. But we'll take in a perfect world, you have 3 comps with numerous pictures, property disclosures, tax records, and all the information that the listing holds. So that way you can put that together. In this book, I have copies of what you would want with your comps. So that way you can look at it when we're finished. But each comp, I have the listing, right here, the listing, the pictures of the home, let me go to the next one. All right, so the tax records and the property disclosures. I have it all in there. When we finish this class, you'll be able to put together a full CMA book like this, which is what you would take to present to your client. We'll go over that. But so you have all those informations about each 3 comps. Get all that together. Now, once you have all that, you want to review it, make notes of everything that you're going to need that is important that you may be making adjustments for. You want to highlight, say, the square footage. You want to highlight the year built. You want to look at the property disclosures. Is there anything that they're notating as far as age of the roof, the HVAC system, or any issues that may be with the house? In the listing, you want to look at the public and agent remarks. Is there anything about new upgraded kitchen, new upgraded bathroom? Look at the listing. Does it say anything about fenced-in yards, patios, decks? Then you reference those with the pictures that have with the listing. So that way you know you have all of the information that may be different or suited from your comp or your subject house to start making these adjustments. So once you have your comps, you want to start filling in your adjustment sheet. I have this adjustment sheet on Excel. If you would like a copy of it, it was created and it automatically fills. When you fill in the numbers, it makes the adjustments kind of for you. It tallies the adding and subtracting for you as you go in to fill it in. So on this sheet, your yellow column, that's your subject property. It's yellow because we put everything in that it has to offer and we don't change it. We never change our subject home. So you will put in all the information that's on this far left side about what it's asking. Now, this sheet, you can change this sheet depending on what your home has to offer. Because like, for example, this one at the bottom has a swimming pool. If your subject home and none of your comps have swimming pools, you may want to take that out. You may want to add a she shed, if it has a she shed. Possibility. It has fenced-in yard, deck, patio, storage building. It has all of those, but if there's something else that the yard has, you may want to add that. If there's something inside like closets, if there's the closets by design, the example I gave, if they have these high-end, nice walk-in closets, you may want to add a line for walk-in closets, because that's going to give value if you have a subject that has a really nice expensive closet versus the comp has a wired frame shelving system. You may want to add that. So you can adjust this depending on what your subject home has. You don't want to adjust your list for your comps. You want to adjust it for your subject home. Notate what your subject has, what your subject offers, what is valuable with that home, things that your seller also may have pointed out to you. You know, if the seller excuse me, points out that, you know, we added a pantry in our kitchen that didn't used to be there. And the seller's like, this pantry is great. We love the pantry. Before we had a pantry, we didn't know what to do with our food. You may want to add pantry into your CMA. If the seller, you know, says that there's a dog bathing station in their garage, you may want to add a dog bathing station, because that can come up as far as value. But it also, you want to make sure you put it in there, because if your seller has pointed it out and told you that it's valuable, you want to make sure that you give credit for something that your seller pointed out. Because otherwise, I can guarantee you your seller's going to come back and say, I showed you this closet that we spent all this money on. Why are you not making an adjustment for this closet? We love the closet. I think it's a great selling feature. So you need to make sure that you put that in there, because it is going to come into play, and it also is going to behoove you and your seller to make sure that you paid attention to what your seller pointed out and you're making adjustments for that. So once you get through filling out all of your subjects information, you put all your subjects information in. Now you're going to go to the next column for sale number 1. At the top, you're going to put sale number 1. What is that property's address? Then under sale number 1, you're going to start filling in all the information that you're able to come up with from the listing, the property disclosures, and the pictures. You're going to start filling in everything for sale number 1. Then you're going to do again for sale number 2. And then again for sale number 3. You want to get all that filled in. Now, once you get all that filled in, how do you know and what do you make these adjustments? You know, if you have square footage, if you have bedrooms, if you have bathrooms, if you have floors that are different, if you have outside, what the outside of the house is made out of, brick versus vinyl. How do you make these adjustments? Well, we have our company adjustment sheet. This sheet breaks down what we do and how we make these adjustments. You know, I have it for square footage, garages, exterior. God, I'm drawing a blank on the exterior.
Exterior construction.
Exterior construction.
Sorry, exterior material.
Thank you. What is the exterior materials of the home? What is the home built of on the outside of the house? I have that on here. If there is a pool, a hot tub, a porch, storage buildings, kitchen, flooring, fireplaces, interior attributes, HVAC, location, and general condition. We have adjustments on here on all of these different things. So then you will start going through each individual line item, and you will compare your subject home to your comp number 1. And if there's a difference, you will make that adjustment according to the adjustment sheet. Now this adjustment sheet is going to vary in some ways depending on the value of the home. Because if you have, say, a $500,000 home, this adjustment sheet is going to be fairly accurate. Now if you have a $1.5 million home, this adjustment sheet, you're going to have to adjust it a little bit higher because adjustments are going to be a little bit different on, say, a $1.5 million home versus a $500,000 home. And what's some examples of that, is like, for example, a bathroom. If you have a full bath versus a half bath in your comps and your subject home, a full bath in a $500,000 home is going to be valued a little bit less than a full bath probably in a $1.5 million home because they're going to be bigger. They're going to have probably higher end fixtures, higher end flooring, higher end shower and tub and vanities. So you're going to make that adjustment depending on the value of the home. Now we can help you with that change depending on the value of the home whenever that situation arises. So you will start making all of your adjustments line by line. You want to start with sale number 1 and go all the way through with sale number 1. Then you want to do the same with sale number 2, the same with sale number 3. Before next class, I want everyone, if they have available time, which you probably should in 2 weeks, to be able to take your home, or if you have a home that you want to do a market analysis on, find 3 comps, find those 3 comps, and fill in this adjustment sheet and see how you come up with a market analysis on that home. We will go over next time the full sheet, yours and one that I have that's completed, and go over how you made the adjustments, how did you come up with your range, and compare. But in the meantime, talking about how to fill this out. So go ahead and fill out columns 1, 2, and 3. Once you fill out columns 1, 2, and 3, at the bottom you should have an adjusted price. Now on the bottom there is also terms of sale and date of sale. I have that on there because terms of sale is going to come into play if there are seller concessions. So if you look at your comps and the comp closed, say, for $400,000, but in the MLS it states that there was $5,000 in seller concessions, we're going to put that $5,000 in seller concessions in the terms of sale. That's where that's going to be applied because those seller concessions come off of a seller's net, come off of the price of the home. When an appraiser is going to make these adjustments, they're going to notate that as well. So we have to notate it in our CMA because we're doing this CMA in line with usually what an appraiser would do. So we can also know that if we list a home, we hope that it will be listed properly and adequately and priced right so that we shouldn't have any appraisal issues. Do you have questions about that? Yes?
All right, I have a question. I guess this might be a little more advanced, but let's say we have, the owner has a huge back patio set and, spent thousands and thousands of dollars, and it may not be on, our CMA cheat sheet. I mean, is there any other way that you can spitball that or find a value for it?
So question was if seller has a really expensive patio and not just like a 10 by 10 concrete pad. They have something that they've put in retaining wall, they may put a fire pit in, they have pavers or stamped concrete, and it's, say, the size of this room. How would you make an adjustment for that? So there's, hard as it is to say, a CMA is not an exact science. It's all subjective. You're taking these numbers and adjustments off of this adjustment sheet that we've provided for you, plus what you feel that should be made for as far as what that adjustment should be made. So if your seller, say, tells you that they have this great, glorious patio in the backyard that they spent, say, $60,000 on building. We're not going to be able to give a full $60,000 adjustment for it because it's not brand new. We're not building it today. It's already been built. But if it's still in great condition and the comp house has, say, just a 10 by 10 concrete slab in the backyard, you may give a $20,000 adjustment for that patio. They're not going to be able to build it for $20,000, but is that an adequate value for that said patio? If you feel that is an adequate value and it is in line with kind of what our sheet says and how you feel, then that's what you need to do. Now, if you feel like if the patio, say, was a $100,000 patio, hopefully they didn't price themselves out of the neighborhood. But if there are people that spend $100,000 on a patio, it's not by any means unrealistic. If they're adding a pergola and they're adding a hot tub and they're adding all this other, I mean, people can spend a fortune in their backyard. But you need to kind of make an educated judgment call on what you feel that value should be. The same thing, with a bathroom. If they add marble floors and they add a marble shower and there's gold faucets, if you get into some of these high-end homes that have this crazy over-the-top like builds, you're going to be making an educated decision and, giving a value what you feel is adequate in that given situation. Because, again, it's not an exact science. There's not this is exactly what a patio like this is going to adjust for. This is exactly what marble floors are going to adjust for. I had a house about 2 years ago that had a custom-built granite fireplace, and they had it shipped from somewhere in Europe. I don't remember where, but I had to give, a decent credit for, not a credit, but a value for that, because they spent a ton of money on this fireplace that they had built and shipped in. If you have someone who has, I've seen, like 3-inch bullnose granite countertops. Their countertops were literally like this thick. Bullnose is rounded. It's completely rounded. That's, custom countertops. You have to kind of figure out what that cost, take a percentage of that, and give a value for it that way. Because there's going to be a lot of unique things you're going to run into that are in homes that you just have to kind of give a value for. And we try to do this, like I said, as best done as an appraiser would do. But if you give an appraiser a property and give the same property to 2 other appraisers, their appraisals are not going to be identical. It's all subjective. They're kind of going off of, they kind of have a sheet very similar to this, but some of it is also subjective. How are they taking into account for things that are in one house and not another? So there's no really right and wrong way to do a CMA, which is the hardest part to try to teach agents how to do a CMA, because if all of us do a CMA on the same property, I guarantee you all of us are going to come up with a slightly different value. Now, we should all be within the same range. Like if I do a CMA and my range is, say, between 510 and 540, we should all be somewhere around 510 to 540. You may come up with 490 to 530. You may come up with 520 to 560, but we're all still kind of in that similar range, which we should be. We shouldn't have someone who comes in and says, well, this house is valued at $400,000 when everybody else is at 530. There's something wrong with that one. Vice versa, they shouldn't come back and say it's at 610 when everybody else is at 530. We should all kind of be in that range. Now, how do we come up with that range? When we take our 3 comps and make all of our adjustments, what do those adjustments total to at the bottom? All 3 of your comps are going to have a different adjusted price those three adjusted prices are going to be your range. Now let's take a step back again and go into making these adjustments. When you're making the adjustments, again, we never change the subject. We only change the comps. So if your subject has 3 bathrooms, your comp has 2, you're adding value to your comp to bring it to your subject. If your subject has 2 and your comp has 3 bathrooms, then we're taking value away from the subject to bring it to the comp. Same thing with square footage. If your subject is 2,000 square feet, your first comp is 1,800 square feet. We're adding value to that comp. If your second comp is 2,200 square feet, we're taking value away from that comp to bring it to your subject. You always change the comps. You never change the subject. Because what we're trying to do is how do we change that comparable number 1 to make it our subject. That's how you want to look at it. We're trying to take this comparable number 1, number 2, number 3, we're trying to change it to make it our subject. Trying to make it equal to. So we always make the adjustments on the comparables, not the subject. So that determines whether you minus or add. And then this back to the term of sale with the seller concessions. Those are always minused. If a seller is paying concessions, those are always minused. You take those away. Because again, that comes off of the seller's net. That was something the seller paid to the buyer. So you're taking that away. And then the other bottom line item was date of sale. I have that in there because if we're using a comp that is more than a year difference from today and our other comps, then we will make an adjustment, a small adjustment for that time of sale. How do we determine a value for that? We're going to look at what the neighborhood or the area has increased over that time frame. If our one comp, say we have our 3 comps, and 2 comps have closed, say, 5 months ago and 6 months ago, and then our third one has been 14 months. So we're just over a year. Let's look at what have values in that neighborhood done in a year. Have the values increased, say, 3%? If home values have increased, say, 3% in that year, then we're going to make an adjustment for that 3% with that 1 year difference in the sale. Now, if it's 3% over a year and we don't need to make a whole year, we only need to make, say, 6 to 9 months, we'll take that 3%, prorate it to, say, 6 or 9 months, take a half or 3/4 of that 3% and make that adjustment on the comp. Does that make sense? That's how I determine date of sale. Now, if you look at your neighborhood and area and there's no change in values in the year, then you're not going to make an adjustment for date of sale. But hopefully, there's some type of increase because we want to see an increase. That's what everyone in the neighborhood wants to see. Everyone selling their house wants to see. But if there's not an increase in values, then you don't make that adjustment. Hopefully there's not the other way. Hopefully there's not a decrease in values in the neighborhood. Now, a couple other things I want to go over about your picking your comps. You want to try to stay away from anything that was a short sale, anything that was a foreclosure, or any comp that looks like it may have sold for some egregiously low price, because there may be comps that were sold to, say, a family member. They may have sold that for a discounted price. They may have had something that was a court mandated sale that they just had to get rid of. They may have had, there's a whole number of reasons why it could be, but if there's any special conditions as to why that home may have sold, or you see that it has sold egregiously under list price or under market price, you may want to stay away from that one. A lot of times the agent remarks or the disclosures or the tax records may state if there were special conditions. So if there are, you may want to try to stay away from those because there may be circumstances that we may not be privy to as to why that closed at what it did. All right? Question, yes.
So when I am looking for my comps on the MLS,
Mm-hmm.
and say I went out 10 miles, I did 180 days search, and then I went the building yard 10 years, give or take, and maybe I can only find one comp, maybe two, but it's not crazy, but I'll take it if I have to. What do I do then? Do I go out more miles, longer, or do I I'm just gonna take these two and run with it?
The question is, if you try to find your comps and you go more than 2, 5, 10 miles out, you're looking at a year out and everything else, and you can only find 1, maybe 2 comps. Do you just run with those 2, or do you try to find that third one? I would recommend try to find a third one, but not always will you be able to find a third one. If you can just do it with 2 and you feel like those 2 are similar enough to give you a decent value on the home, then you can go with 2. And appraisal, I've never seen an appraisal with 2. I've always seen appraisals with 3. So try to get that third one. There's ways to do it to back build one if you have a comp that's very, very different than your subject, because there are ways if you have to do it, you can try to back build a CMA, but that's a whole nother, whole nother class.
Another question, say you're close, like on the edge of Mecklenburg County versus Union County, can I take a comp from Union County, or do you stay in Mecklenburg County in the same?
So the question was, if you're right on, say, the edge of the county line, which happens a lot, you can have a neighborhood that half the neighborhood's in one county, the other half of the neighborhood's in another county. We always try to stay in the same county. But if you're in the same neighborhood, then I would say use the same neighborhood. Even if it is a different county, you're still in the same neighborhood. So if you're still in the same neighborhood, you still have the same builder, you still have the same building materials, you still have the same layouts, I would recommend staying in the neighborhood. Now, if you have another neighborhood that's just out of the county line, I would recommend trying to stay in the same county. But when you're close to the county line, especially the way metropolises are growing, you can have, the suburbs of Charlotte are in 5 different counties, so you may go into another county. There may be times where that is suitable and okay. If you can try to keep it in the same county, try to do that. But if you need to go out to find your comps, go out. Because, there's so many suburbs of a city, especially Charlotte, that flow into Union County, Cabarrus County. It's, before you know it, they might as well just be all one county. So years ago when all of Charlotte was in one county, Charlotte still is in Mecklenburg County, but there wasn't this growth that's expanding outside of Charlotte into the surrounding counties. Before, when it was all more centralized, it was easy to stay in the county. But now as they're expanding, you have neighborhoods that go into different counties, different cities, different states. So you got to work with what you have. You got to work with what you have. So, but that was a very good question. Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Right. For your market analysis and your 3 adjusted comps, do you try to keep like a certain percentage of range in between the 3 of them, or sometimes you can do a CMA and you might have like $100,000 variance. So you try to keep like a certain percentage
Got it.
on the sales price.
All right. So, question was, if I have my 3 comps and my adjusted price range is like $100,000 price range difference, do I try to keep it closer and in together? Yes, I do. I would ideally, if you have a $500,000 house, you want your range to kind of be within $20,000 to $30,000 or smaller. So if you have a $100,000 range, you want to look at your 3 comps. Is one of them kind of just an outlier that's making that range bigger? If so, go back and check all of your adjustments. If all of your adjustments are good, then you may want to throw that comp out and try to find another one to replace it. Because if you have your 3 comps, your first comp price adjusted value, say, is at 500, your second one is at 515, your third one is at 590. That third one is way out there. We may want to recheck those numbers or totally get rid of that comp, try to find a better one, and try to do another third one that brings that range in tight. Because we want that range to be as tight as possible. Ideally, in a perfect world, that range will be within $10,000. Would be great. If we can have all 3 of our comps within $10,000, now we have a very tight, solid analysis on the home. We start getting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 range. Now it kind of becomes questionable. Are we going to be able to list it properly? Are we going to leave money on the table? Are we going to underprice it? Because you're starting to get into a bigger range. So you want to try to narrow that down. So you can also go back and look at your adjustments. Were you making a $30,000 adjustment for a patio? Maybe you need to make a $25,000 adjustment for that patio. Or if you made a $30,000 adjustment and it's still low, maybe you need to make a $35,000 adjustment for that patio. You know, look at your bathroom adjustments. Did you make a bathroom adjustment according to the value of the home? Maybe you need to up those adjustments a little bit or take them down. I mean, if you do it for one, you need to do it for all of them. Don't just say, well, you know what, let me just take this one that was an outlier and adjust it differently. That's going to throw off your whole thing. But if you're starting to make one adjustment different, make it for all of them. That might help tighten that range down. So you can always go back and readjust it and see how you did to see if you can try to crunch that range down. Do we have any other questions? I like these questions. These are good questions. You know?
More or less, I guess if you could go a little bit more into explaining the benefits of doing a quality CMA and how it helps a listing agent down the line when it comes to pricing, you know, when buyers, especially intimidating buyers, and intimidating sellers, and how I, you know, use this as pretty critical.
Yeah, so how does this benefit you as a list agent and a real estate agent in today's market? If you do a CMA like this and you present it to your seller and your seller is interviewing other agents, there is a large percentage of other agents that don't do a CMA this detailed. They're going to do what's in our MLS, a quick CMA. They're going to find their 3 comps. They're going to hit those 3 comps and give me a quick CMA, which just takes an average square foot, average price, average cost per square foot, and says, here's your median price, here's what this house should sell for. There's no adjustments on any upgrades, any other attributes, anything else that the home has to offer. If you do a CMA like this, it will only benefit you if you're hopefully trying to go against another listing agent and compete for it. Because a seller's going to look at, well, this agent put in all this work, made all these notes and adjustments, and came up with a quote-unquote more accurate, true value of my home than just taking averages of 3 comps and throwing them out there and saying, here's what I think your home should sell for. So it is imperative that you do this properly because it will benefit you and help you get that listing. And also, when you have a buyer that may come to you or an appraiser that comes to you on your listing and asks, how did you come up with your list price? Well, let me show you. I did this. I found these 3 comps. I made all of these adjustments. I came up with this range, and we listed it right inside of that range. I have proof and documentation as to why and how I came up with this value. And numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. And the other benefit is, you know, when you list a home, you have to list it where your seller wants you to. Just because you recommend a range like this doesn't mean your seller wants to list it.
That would be my question. I was going to ask you.
Yes.
The seller doesn't come to you with a price. They usually come with the price that they're looking for, right?
Right.
So your comp should, you hope, would fall within their range?
You hope so,
Yes.
but they don't always do that. So say, we'll just have numbers here. Say your comps put the house between 500 and 520. Your seller says, I'll let you list my house, but I want to list it for 550, which is going to happen. It happens a lot. All we can do is show and recommend and advise. We're going to list it whatever they want to list it for. But now the benefit of this is if an offer comes in inside this range, you can also let your seller know before you list it and when that offer comes in that buyers have the same information that I have. If they are going to do an analysis on your home prior to making an offer, they are probably going to be in this range. So when that offer comes in, you can let your seller know, look, I know we listed it at $550. I told you and recommended to you, I don't want to say I told you, I recommended to you that your home would probably sell within this range. And now we have an offer in this range. The buyers have done their due diligence, found comps, and compared them to your home, and they say that your home is worth this. Because at the end of the day, no matter what this says, no matter what your seller says, a home's value is what? A home is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And someone is willing to pay what they feel is adequate in their eyes. Now, if we're able to back that up with our comps, at least now our seller can be, made aware and, informed that this is where it should probably sell for in today's market in its current condition. Now, that does not mean that a buyer may not truly love that home and they may be willing to pay $550 for it. Because, again, if someone's willing to pay for it, that's what it's worth. But just, at least you want to let the seller know, even if they decide to list high, this is where I feel the home should probably sell for, and this is where I can see offers coming in at. So that way, if it does happen, at least you've already had the conversation and you've already made your seller aware of it. So it's not a surprise.
Good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want the listing. Even if we list it a little high. High listing is better than a no listing. You're going to have a chance at selling a house. And just because the seller says let's list it at $550, if an offer comes in at $520, doesn't mean they won't take it. They very well may take it. Sellers are notorious for changing their mind or going down when they have an offer in front of them. When they see the numbers and the money in front of them, they'll do that. But you want to try to do this because you don't want is to leave money on the table for your seller. You don't want to tell your seller, oh, your home should sell for $500, and then you do something like this and find out it should sell for like $530. Because then you're leaving money on the table for your seller. So that way, at least you can try to get them the most for their home. And the math like this, it tells them what their home should sell for. All right? So between tonight and our next class, I would like you to find a home that you want to do a market analysis on. Whether it's your home, a friend's home, a client's home, whatever home. Pick a home and then find 3 comps. Find those 3 comps, get the information on those 3 comps, and try to fill this adjustment sheet out. Now, if you've never done one, don't feel like, well, I feel like I'm going to screw it up, I'm going to not do it. We don't care about that. We want to be able to see what you do know, how you did it, so that way, if there are things you need to improve on, we know what they are. because everyone that does one, the first couple I did, I had to get my manager to review and help me fix because I wanted to do it by myself. My first one, I kind of butchered, but I learned from it. The second one was much better. The third one was good. You know, so it's all learning. But we don't know what you need to work on until we see what you come up with. So try your best to do it, put it together, complete it, and then when we have our class next time, we'll go over what you have. I will show you one that I did and the adjustments and how I came with with my adjustments, and we'll kind of go from there. Sound good? All right. Well, if there's not anything else, I appreciate y'all this evening. We'll pick this up again, and thank you everybody that was watching from home. I want to appreciate the attention, the time, and hopefully you're learning something.